Well, a major effort is underway to convince more Christian voters to help elect Kamala Harris as president. Part of this strategy involves reaching out to conservatives. Chief political analyst David Brody brings us the story.
Since Kamala Harris stepped in to become the Democrat nominee for president, she's enjoyed a wave of positive poll numbers and huge crowds at rallies. If she's to carry that momentum into the fall, however, tapping into the Christian vote could potentially take her to the White House.
The Bible teaches us so much about what we must do to be dutiful. Understanding we have a duty to our God and to one another.
Raised as a Baptist in San Francisco, Harris's faith is rooted in what is commonly known as the social justice gospel. This human rights approach centers more on Jesus' teaching of compassion for those less fortunate rather than a fundamentalist viewpoint. The quest to promote that message to Christian voters is well underway.
Vice President Kamala Harris is a fellow Christian.
The group Evangelicals for Harris hosted a Zoom call this month that drew tens of thousands. The founder, Reverend Jim Ball, the former head of a Christian environmental organization, says the group plans to reach beyond a progressive audience.
We're trying to reach out to as many conservative folks as we can.
You are?
Yeah, we try to reach out to websites that are highly visited by Trump supporters, by so-called MAGA Republicans.
You think there's an opportunity there?
We do.
The group's 200,000 members are focused mainly in swing states. They're planning to spend more than $1 million on video ads targeting specific Christian households on places like YouTube, Hulu, Apple TV, Google, and Facebook. Their first ad goes after Donald Trump.
Have you ever asked God for forgiveness? That's a tough question. I'm not sure I have. I don't bring God into that picture. I don't.
While taking on Trump could be a tall order, they believe there's an opening. Among his base of white evangelical Protestant voters, 37% see Trump as a great president. 37% say a good one. The window may be that 9% consider him average, 6% poor, 10% say terrible. Those three categories total 25% of conservative evangelicals who could potentially be difference makers. We saw that happen for Barack Obama in 2008 when he received 26% of this key group and won. And again in 2020 as Joe Biden received 24% and also won. In 2016, Hillary Clinton lost after receiving only 16% of conservative evangelical voters. If Kamala Harris can, let's just say, get over 20% or more, she's in business.
We're hoping that we'll have an historic amount this time, so we'll see.
Obama levels, maybe.
Yes, Obama levels, that's right. So we're hoping for that.
And allies are joining with them, such as the group Faithful America, which bills itself as the largest online community of Christians. Black Church PAC is also active, holding a recent Zoom call that attracted 16,000 churchgoers and raised $500,000 toward voter outreach. Then there's Christians for Kamala.
Hello, everybody. Hello, my fellow Christians.
Senator Cory Booker and CNN's Van Jones are some of the big names focusing on progressive Christians.
I always say, before you tell me about your religion, first show it to me and how you treat other people.
Her agenda is to stand for what Jesus called the least of these, the addicted, the convicted, the afflicted, the evicted.
Conservatives say evangelicals shouldn't fall for this worldview, which they believe is Christian socialism, leftist thought, identity politics, and Marxist-driven liberation theology all rolled into one. Biblical scholar Robert Gagnon calls Evangelicals for Harris an oxymoron, indeed an insult to our intelligence. And the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission says, quote, unfortunately, the positions that Harris has our track record of supporting and advocating for would lead to a devaluing of marriage, the deaths of the preborn, and a restricting of religious liberty for people of faith. And her opponent, well, he's weighed in as well.
How any Christian can vote for a Democrat, Christian or person of faith,
Person of faith, how you could vote for a Democrat is crazy. It's crazy. They've got to stop.
If folks are wondering how can somebody vote for one party or the other, I'd say, first of all, center it in Jesus' lordship, and then ask, who was Jesus concerned about? And Jesus was concerned about the vulnerable. And which party is taking care of the vulnerable?
Texas State Representative James Tallarico currently is in seminary and on board with Evangelicals for Harris.
You know, when I was a kid growing up here in Texas, I remember people wearing those bracelets with the letters WWJD. What would Jesus do? And I think that's the question we need to ask ourselves when we go into the voting booth this November.
Conservative Christians often point out Harris's positions on abortion, marriage, and gender identity. Trump's campaign believes his traditional policies in those areas will resonate much more with evangelicals. Tallarico isn't so sure and wants to send a message.
Donald Trump is taking your vote for granted. He thinks he's got it in the bag. And honestly, I think Donald Trump does not represent Christian values.
That's why this effort is focused squarely on love thy neighbor when it comes to the agenda ahead. Plus, it worked for Obama.
Throughout the history of Christianity, there have been progressive Christians, those who pushed this world to more fully realize the gospel of Jesus Christ. Martin Luther King Jr., Cesar Chavez, Dorothy Day, Jimmy Carter, Mr. Rogers. Progressive Christians aren't anything new. We've been here all along.
God bless the United States of America.
The question now is, will Kamala Harris join that list? Christians, both left and right, will provide the answer in short order. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Well, I hope the election is going to happen soon. I'm frankly getting very tired of the campaign. It's been going on for almost 4 years. So you look back and boy, have there ever been some twists and turns. I have long prayed for there to be more Christians within the Democrat Party. When you look at the demos that, how many of the none of the aboves, the atheists, the agnostics, they pretty much overwhelmingly identify with the Democrats. And I think long-term for America, it's always been a wonderful thing that both parties had strong Christians and belief in God. Here's the struggle, though, and I think it's a really big one that every Christian needs to take a step back and look at. And I'll go back to Abraham Lincoln. When he was asked during the height of the Civil War, is God on our side? And here he is, he's fighting a war to stop slavery. And it's quite clear he viewed himself as on a mission to do that this was the righteous thing to do. He was fighting that war and was asked, is God on our side? His famous response was, I'm not concerned about that. What I'm concerned about is, are we on God's side? And that should be the prayer of every Christian, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, that are you so zealous for your cause that you don't perceive the overall kingdom of God at work. I remind Christians, when Jesus comes back, he's not going to come back as a Republican. He's not going to come back as a Democrat. He's going to come back to take over. Now the issue is, are we on his side? And in what we do and how we act in the world today, are we supporting the kingdom of God? That has been a long tradition in American politics. And the church has long functioned as the conscience of our culture and our society to point out when we're doing things wrong. We need to keep that position because that's the position where we're on God's side.